How you doing, everybody? Listen, I want to talk about a couple of things today. It's Monday morning. It's 20th of June 2011 and it's coming up to 11 o'clock, and I just want to talk about a couple of articles. The first one is very interesting, I think anyway. It gives you a little insight into what the reality is. And it's to do with the Irish Stock Exchange, and it's the company that runs the Irish Stock Exchange. And I'm going to post the article up. I'm going to post a link to it so you can, if you want to read the actual article. It's from the Irish Times, and then what I'll do is I'll put it up on the screen now, and you can, if you want, you can have a brief read of it now. Okay. And as you can see, what it really is it basically explains to you that the company that runs the Irish Stock Exchange has sold all of its equities. Alright. So you have to, that'd be like a bookshop selling all its books, or a fruit shop selling all its fruit. Alright. And they've got into cash. So equities don't look too good a bet for the next contrary to what everybody tells you. Equities, when the company that runs, okay, it's one of the smallest equity markets in Europe, but nonetheless the validity still holds up. When a company that runs it, and it's going to be run, that company is going to be itself run by all the leading gurus of the Irish Stock Exchange movement, the equities, the bond traders, the equity traders from all the various banks and institutions would have shares in that company. And when the directors of that company make a decision to jump equities, it gives you an idea of what's coming down the line. Alright, anyway, have a look at that. That's interesting. The next thing I just want to talk about is the Irish bond spread. It's gone up to 11.6. I think it's 11.6. I'm going to put it up and you can have a look at it. So in the space of about 5 weeks, it's gone up 1.5%. Now look, a couple of people have asked me about what is this bond spread, and look, you have to Google that and just look it up yourself. Like I'm not here to explain the basic fundamentals to people. It's a borrowing rate that countries have, that they're able to go to the bond market and borrow money. It's one of the two ways that all countries have to raise finance for themselves. They raise it through tax or through issuing of debt, and through the status of bonds, and that's what they're doing here. And Ireland's not in a position to do it anymore. As I explained before to you, the credit rating of the people who live in Ireland, the average Joe who lives inside Ireland, is now better than the nation state of Ireland. So that tells you the precarious position that our country's in. Okay. Anyway, it's gone up to 11.6. You can see it's almost on a par with Portugal, and it's a full 6 points behind Greece. So no matter what they do in Greece, they're not going to solve this problem. They're just going to kick the can down the road. The Greece thing is not going to be solved unless they default and park the debt for a prolonged period. There's no other way out of it. Just like it's going to be the same with us. When they've dealt with the debt, with the Greek problem, and it doesn't collapse the whole economic order, it probably won't, because I think that it's going to be closely connected with QE3 in America. And I think what's going to happen is, as they prepare for the land invasion of Libya, and the gurus on the internet say that they have contacts within the American Armed Forces that tell them that it's going to happen in September or October. Alongside that will come QE3, as all the flag waving and all the tanks and all the troops move into Libya. And another front is opened up on the ongoing war, the American imperial behemoth. That's the only way you could describe it. The craziness that's going on with the Great Republic at the moment. What's going to happen is they're going to launch QE3, and they're going to put more money into these European banks, because you must remember, American citizens, that's where in QE1 and QE2, that's where the bulk of the money went. The bulk of the money that your Treasury is printing through the Federal Reserve and issuing through the Federal Reserve is going to European banks. Because when the American banks sold all the European banks, all this toxic debt that they have on their books, all these CDOs that are not worth the paper, they're not worth a light. They're not worth the light. They're worth a tiny, tiny fraction of what the book value of them is. When that happened, from what the gurus again on the internet say, and I believe them, the American banks, the big investment banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan and all the rest of them, guaranteed that if there was any flack down the lane, that they would get the support. They would back up any flack that was to come. And of course what's happening is, it's all coming home to roost now. Because the real people who play all these markets know that what these European banks are holding as assets are not worth, as I say, the paper they're written on. They're not worth a light. These European banks, in the main, are all completely and utterly insolvent stroke bankrupt. And the only thing that's going to keep them alive is if there's another QE3 and a large proportion of the money that's generated through that QE3 is pumped into these European banks. But it still has not dealt with the main issue, and the main issue is the real asset value that these banks have, that these banks are holding. They have paper value in the multi-billions, but in reality its real value is a tiny fraction of that. They're all insolvent, they're all bankrupt. And that's why, if this Greek thing does default and QE3 has not happened before, that's why they're going to kick the can with Greece. They're going to kick the can down the lane. QE3 will come in and they'll pump more money into the European banks from America. And also, obviously, some of the American banks as well. But primarily the European banks. Because Europe is in one hell of a mess at the moment. But it will not solve the real problem. Because I really don't believe there's enough money in the world to solve the real problem. However, it brings me on to just a couple of small things. I want you to look it up because there's many articles on it. I've put up a link to one article, but if you Google it, you'll see it's called Solar Hibernation. And what it tells you is, I don't see too many people talking about it on the internet, but I became aware of it over the last few months, and it basically defuncts and knocks for six this whole global warming nonsense that we've been exposed to. And we sort of have been exposed to, because in reality it's just this global warming nonsense is just basically down to raising taxes against the middle class and the working class people. That's all. It's just a further taxation, and it's been knocked for six by the research done on this solar hibernation, which tells us that we're entering in this cycle of exactly that, solar hibernation, where the sun is going to calm down. It's not going to be sending off solar flares. Its activity is going to be vastly reduced, and as a result, huge amounts of energy from the sun, from our God out there, our living God, the God who gives us, breathes us life into us every day, our real God. He's going to go quiet, and when he goes quiet, we're going to freeze. So we're going to have long, arduous, cold winters, and they reckon that this cycle is definitely going to last 17 years, but it could last as long as 75 years. We don't know. We really don't know. So that's the situation. It's not an exact science, obviously, but it does seem to have have basis in fact. So we better prepare for that. You can forget about the global warming thing. Anybody who mentions global warming, just refer them to that. Solar hibernation, and ask them have they got any comments to make on that. Because we're heading into a mini ice age from what I can see. Certainly our winters are going to get a lot longer and a lot more severe. And the final thing then I want to talk about is this Fukushima thing. And you can see how really at the end of the day how news really is propaganda. when the Russians had their Chernobyl affair, and what happened to Chernobyl was, outside the city of Kiev, approximately 250 miles from the city of Kiev, they had it was a small reactor. It blew up. It didn't melt or anything, it just blew up. It just poof, and it threw huge volumes of radioactive material up into the air, and it left the whole inner core of the reactor exposed. And the Russians immediately dealt with it by dropping hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete and lead ball bearings, mixed with lead ball bearings, big ball bearings, and made a pit, and then covered it with a giant sarcophagus, concrete sarcophagus. That's how they dealt with it. And in doing that, they reckon that thousands of them gave their lives. All the helicopter pilots all died. They had to do away with all the helicopters. All the helicopters were irradiated, and all the equipment was irradiated. It had to be destroyed afterwards. Many of the scientists gave their lives for it, to bring it about. But while it was all going on, every single day, night and day, of the Western newspapers were full of this business that was going on, this Chernobyl. Every single person in the world knew the name of Chernobyl, what was going on a daily basis. And it was basically Russian technology was scorned. And it was basically a giant propaganda exercise at the end of the Cold War, because the Cold War was still effectively going on. Russia was still a communist empire as such. And now we're in a situation where 4 nuclear reactors, much larger nuclear reactors, are in full meltdown, are in the process of full meltdown on an island called HONSHU of Japan. I believe there's 70 million people on it, on this island, and there's not a word about it. There's not a word about it. And it's throwing off colossal amounts of radioactivity into the upper atmosphere, which is basically polluting the whole world. But you see, it's America's great ally. This is the 3rd biggest industrial power in the world. It's America's great ally. It's one of America's main agents in that area, and it's not in America's interests or in the Western powers' interests to show up what's going on, to demonstrate what's going on, to demonstrate the arrogance of putting nuclear power stations on critical land masses which are exposed to earthquakes and sudden seismic effects. I mean, the whole thing, you can't make this sort of stuff up. You cannot make this sort of stuff up. You know, we have an elite that rules the world, and they're not just a political or an economic elite. There's an industrial elite, there's a technocratic elite. And these people are above everything. They're above morals, they're above ethics, they're above everything. They just do things for expediency and for immediate gain, and for, there's no thought obviously put into. I mean, imagine they have a large number of these. I forget the number. I think it's 27 or 35 or something like that of these nuclear reactors on that island, all over that island. One of the epicenters for seismic activity in the world, and they built nuclear reactors. I mean, who are these people? Who gives them the right to do these things? Anyway, I don't know, you could go on talking about it forever, couldn't you? I just feel at times it's just so frustrating. But at the end of the day, it's only down to one thing. It's just down to money and personal power. That's what it's all down to. These people are all the same the world over. They're the same as the people that went to that Bilderberg meeting there. Do you know what I mean? Over the last week down in Switzerland. completely unelected people, powerful people, meeting in secret that decide the future of our world, of our little earth, our little planet. Totally arbitrarily. Nobody elected them. They've just decided, the Bill Gates of this world, the Soroses of this world, all these horrible people, that's what they are. They're just horrible, disgusting people. But their decisions impact on every one of us, every day. And the only reason why I raised this Fukushima thing is, I said when it came out that I reckon hundreds of thousands of people would die, because that's what died that's the number of people that they reckon died in Chernobyl from the direct effects of Chernobyl. I reckon there'll be millions die on that island of HONSHU, and probably hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. I reckon the levels of cancers, lung cancers in particular, are going to dramatically increase across the world, and I'm sure it's going to have a major impact on pregnant women and young, very, very young children. It must have, has to have, because they're so vulnerable and so fragile at that particular period of their lives and periods of their development. Anyway, we'll await to see the outcome, but I hate to be full of pessimistic porn on a Monday morning, but it don't look good. Alright, listen, we're going to talk more. We've lots to talk about at the moment. Okay, see you later. Bye.